Jesse. I'm running LoveCry.
And I'm Anthony with LoveCry as well. And I just wanted to discuss a couple of things with Jesse. So, I have a pretty good friend, and she was telling me, like, her ex is so, like, lost, but he's making these TikTok videos giving life advice to people.
It's always good.
And for the record, like, this woman is not, in my experience of her, she's not judgmental. I haven't experienced her putting people down to make herself feel better. Like, she's not an overly judgy person, so I thought that was hilarious. But I was listening to some TikToks. I'm on TikTok, and this guy was saying, I don't need other people's approval. I don't care what you think of me. I'm going to make my own way. I'm going to love myself. I'm going to prove myself and all this. And so it just kind of brought me to thinking, I have a family member who has cut me off. So she's like, you're a negative person. I'm cutting you out of my life. And so I said, okay. I didn't argue it. And I'm not suggesting that what I did was proper, but I'm like, whatever. And so I guess I just wanted to explore this concept, and I have some feelings on it, but, I'm seeing a lot of this thing in TikTok and even on YouTube, like, take negative people out of your life. Someone's toxic, kick them out of your life. You don't need toxicity in your life. Just show people the door. If they're not supporting you, then just, show them the door and just, like, clear this stuff out of your life. So I think that, like many pieces of advice, like, it can be good and it can be bad. It depends on how you take this advice and what you do with it. So if it's taken too far, because everyone in your life is going to fuck up, and you in your life are also going to fuck up. So if every time somebody fucks up, you cut them out of your life, then you will have no one in your life, right? So you have to use your judgment and your wisdom, and even ask other people if you want to borrow some of their wisdom. Here's the situation. What do I do about this person? And then, if you have, like, I have a good friend, and everybody in his life was saying, dude, you got to get away from that relationship. You have to get out of there, right? So everyone in his life was unanimously saying this. And then, 5 years later, he got himself out of it. And he probably wishes he did it sooner. So probably not everyone in your life is wrong when they're like, okay, that person in your life, you've got to. So it's about, knowing when to do it. So if you do it indiscriminately, then you can end up alone, and then you can be too harsh on yourself. Because, like I say, we all make mistakes, and you just have to see, is this mistake a problem? Is this a habitual mistake? Have I addressed it with this person and they don't care? They don't give a shit, like, about this mistake, and they just keep doing it? Is there a prognosis? Is the prognosis that they're going to keep doing that mistake forever? Or is the prognosis that maybe they'll stop doing this mistake? Or maybe I'll grow past to the point where this mistake won't matter as much to me.
That you have to grow past it so the mistake doesn't matter to you. Angel said, exhaust your buttons.
Exhaust your buttons. Okay, yeah. So someone's like, oh, that really pushes my buttons, oh gosh.
So when they're like, when they're constantly doing the same thing over and over and over again, that's hurting you and upsetting you. They're doing it on purpose because that's how they get energy. So you have to allow those.
Well, it can be something that they're doing on purpose. I mean, I don't think every time someone's pushing your buttons, it's premeditated. But you're saying it can be done because when you're upset at them because they pushed your buttons, if they keep doing it, maybe it's because they're getting an energy.
But it's not premeditated. Like, some of them are premeditated, but a lot of times it's unconsciously doing it. So to me, it's still premeditated in a sense because it's in there. You're just refusing to look at the thoughts. So when you refuse to look at the thoughts, you're premeditating in a sense that this is who you are and you're not going to do these things. Do you know what I mean? But you already are set to do these things based on your conditioned thinking. Do you know what I mean? So you want to believe this while you're doing this.
Right. So someone might be an energy vampire, and you ask them, hey, are you an energy vampire? Like, no, of course not. And they believe themselves, but they might actually be an energy vampire and not want to admit that to themselves about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And, that's something that kind of blew my mind when I was in a group therapy thing like 25 years ago, that I lie to myself. And then I believe the lies that I told myself. So this is part of the human condition. We all do it. So the thing is to try to see it as much as we can.
And that's the hard part within society, because no one likes constructive criticism. They just want you to say, that was great. You're beautiful. You're perfect. Just the way you are.
Yeah, if you're really my friend, you're going to approve of me, like, at all times, no matter what. Like, I'm always great.
But if they are your friend, they're going to show you, hey, like, this doesn't seem like you. Look at this. Based on these things, you're going to have a conversation. But if it upsets you to the point of anger, then obviously you're creating a mirage and you're fighting for it. Because when it's something of who you are, you don't need to fight for it. You could discuss it, because no matter what someone says to you, you're not going to believe something else of yourself. It's who you are. But when it's not who you are, you're going to fight. You're going to defend.
So if you're trying to convince yourself you're something, but you're not, and someone points out, hey, you're actually not, you're going to get really mad. Just like, whoa, now you're threatening my facade that I've created for myself, and I don't want to believe, I don't want to look there, so don't say anything that makes me look there.
Yeah, I have my own truth, you have your own truth, you know? And yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, we all have our own truths in a sense, but then when we're in the mix of people, it's not just our own truth. Because now our own truth might actually hurt someone, so we have to open that truth to like a full, more rounded truth for everyone. Because if it's just our own truth, then how are we ever going to change anything in this world? Because everyone's, that's your truth, that's your truth, that's your truth, that's your truth. And it's like, okay, that works on a personal level. But on a collective level, your own truth is like, it's kind of irrelevant at that point, because it doesn't take in the consideration of everyone. And it's a bigger thing. I don't want to say irrelevant. It's just your truth needs to be like, it needs to be more, say about it.
You need to realize that your truth is your truth, and that there could be other angles that you're not seeing. Like, you have to realize your truth might not be the entire truth.
Yeah, your truth is what's helping you get by in the moment right now, but it's not the reality of the world. It's, so when we go out and try to say, we want change or things, we have to look past our own truth. We have to look at the truth for everyone, for the well-being of all, not just, oh, if that's true, then I'm going to lose that, and then I have to deal with this, or I have to, no, so let's just keep it like this, because that's, oh,
it works for me.
I don't have to, I'm not negative, and that's more of a, like, a delusion, because we all have negative and positive within us, so that it's important to acknowledge both, because when you ignore one and then you want to push away others for their negativity, then what are you doing to yourself? You've obviously lost yourself, because you're pushing away others for their mistakes or their negativity, then you've done it to your own self, and so you're not really being who you are, because you don't like it, you're bad, so you can only allow the good thoughts, which is...
So what we do externally, we do internally, right? So this is a theme that I've mentioned. So what you're saying is really interesting. I never thought of that, is that if someone is like, I'm going to cut this person out, I'm going to cut that person out because they're negative, I don't want the negative in my life. So if you're doing that to people around you, like as a habit or excessively, you're for sure doing that within yourself, where you're not looking at whole sections of yourself, because they might be negative. They might not be what you want them to be.
Yeah.
So what you're doing outside is happening inside. Now, that's not to the point where you have to turn yourself into a doormat and let someone step on your head 150 times. So it's about using your judgment and asking yourself, like, revisiting that. Did I make the right choice? And if it's happening with a lot of people, like if everyone is, one close friend of mine many years ago was like, all guys are assholes. Every guy I meet is an asshole. It's like, well, what's within her which is manifesting with all the men in her life, right? And yeah, I tried to set up with a friend of mine who I didn't know was gay at the time because he wasn't out, but that's another story. But it's what you're doing outside is happening inside, whether you realize it or not. Yeah. So to be mindful of that. So as you embrace that, hey, I'm an imperfect person. I'm not an angel. I'm not a messiah. I'm a person. I've got faults. I've got mistakes within me. I've made mistakes. So if you can have grace and generosity towards those aspects of yourself, then you can bring that understanding to people around you. And like I say, don't let someone keep stabbing you, like take the knife off them or get away from them. But it's like, have that balance.
It's not about stabbing. Like, so if someone's constantly stabbing you back or trying to take you down and stuff, you could develop that thought process of trust where they should be. You don't have to get rid of them, because in a sense, God sent them there to teach you. they're teaching you how to be positive, how to work with those negative thinking patterns, how to process and how to relate it to yourself with them. So there's a lot of growth that goes on when someone's attacking you.
There's a lot of growth that can go on.
Yeah. Doesn't necessarily always happen.
And for both parties.
Yeah, and that's because westernized society kind of teach you not to deal with it. You know, so it never really gets healed. So that's a big part of the problem there too, is because society tries to tell you that, you know, this is taboo, don't talk about these things. Sorry, I kind of lost.
I mean, I think all of Western society has this compartmentalism. It's kind of anti-holism.
Yeah.
Right. So when you have a nose problem, you go to a nose doctor. You have an eye problem, you go to an eye doctor. But if you go to a Chinese doctor, they'll be like, well, your nose is like that because your gut is this way. Your eyes are like that because your liver is like this. So Chinese medicine and other forms of alternative medicine see that holism, because you are a whole organism. You're not just a nose. You're not just eyes. You're like an entire organism. Similarly, a person is not just a person, but they're within a web. They're in a family, they're in a social circle, they're in a group, they're with people at work, whatever it is. So every person is affecting other people, and then those other people are affecting other people. So each person, they're pulling a string on the spider web. The whole spider web is moving. And so we're all a part of a system. We're all like one cell in a large body, but every cell has an effect on that body, and every cell is a part of that body.
And you could turn that knife into like a banana or like something soft, like, because with your mind, so instead of taking it as a stab in the back, you could take it as like an uplift. Say this was one time at LoveCry. There was a student that was there talking about, like, because we do this cage, you see them in a cage of unconditional love, so they may learn what they need to learn. And one of them was telling me how they put them in there and they light them on, like, torch them. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'll just sit in there and I'll suntan, I'll just tan to that. And she was like, I never heard that response. Because usually she gets a negative response, like, oh my God, like it's supposed to be for good. And, but instead I made it to something good, like she was tanning me, like you're not hurting me, you're tanning me. So like it's all a matter of perception as well in your mind too. So no one could hurt you or influence you in a negative way if it's not already in you.
So if somebody's pushing your button, that's an opportunity for you to say, like, wow, that really got my goat, right? So why did I react so strong? Why did that make me so mad? Let me explore that. It's not just about that person.
Yeah.
That button was already there. They didn't make the button. They just pressed it. So it's an opportunity for you to examine, like, why did that make me so mad? Because it's going to relate to something else that you're carrying around. And in another talk, you talked about, like, taking your backpack and off your back. You're like, oh, wow, I'm lighter now. So that button is a heavy thing in your backpack if you examine it. And that's the thing. When you shed light on something, then it loses its power. It's like the Wizard of Oz. They pull back the curtain, and it's like this little old guy pulling these levers. And he's like, oh, and he's trying to pull the curtain back. So once you've seen what your button is, like, oh, that's not really a big deal, right? But if you're trying to avoid looking at it, then that button keeps working, and anyone can press it and get a rise out of you.
Yeah, and even like for right now, like my daughter's come back into my life, who I've mentioned a few times. She's been living with me for 5 years, and my computer's about to die, I think.
Okay, so maybe we should call it a wrap.
So yes, we'll end this one probably now. Yeah, because it's gonna die.
All right,
thanks. All right, yeah, thanks for listening. We'll try to add on to this next week.
Cool.
Thanks.